And hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hiker Sessions. And I'm real excited today to be joined by Caboose.
That's right.
Caboose met on July 28th, a little bit north of Bennington, Vermont, at Story Springs Shelter. It's funny how you remember a lot of these. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I had to look up the exact date, but I'm like, I know it was right after Bennington. And then we ran into each other a few more times. Oh, we camped at that spot a little north of Pinkham Notch where that sketchy guy was.
Right. He claimed the whole shelter, so everybody else had a tent camp.
We did. I was on, and I think I was on a slope that night. And then I know we ran across each other again in New Hampshire. At the end of the day, we were both getting picked up. And then the two ladies you were hiking with, remind me of their
Right.
names.
Season 1 and Phoenix.
Yeah, Phoenix, and she was from Germany.
She is, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, no, did you guys you started out alone? Did you?
We actually all started on the same day, and so our paths kept on crossing, and we'd stop and talk. We'd stay at the same campsite, so we were friendly with each other, but we weren't hiking with each other yet.
Yeah. What was your expectation as starting out? Like, I'll hike alone and maybe meet somebody, maybe, but do my own thing, or what?
Right. Well, my brother actually started with me, and his intent was to go to Gatlinburg, and that's what he did. He almost didn't make it. He's got osteoarthritis in both of his knees, and so he was really hurting by the end of his portion of the thing. But season 1 started hiking with us at mile 75, and so her and I hiked the whole rest of the trail together. But my thought was, I was hoping that if I didn't have any other people that I was hiking with at that time, that I would eventually find some type of a tramily. So her and I hiked the whole rest of the way, and then Phoenix joined up with us, the first campsite in the Shenandoahs.
Wow. So the whole thing except for 75 miles. That's amazing. I mean, you must have
Yeah,
really cemented a bond there. I mean, I can't imagine there's not many days
yeah,
that go by that you don't text her.
yeah, we talk pretty often.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. So
Yeah,
you're on the trail. Let's back up a little bit. I was checking out your YouTube channel, and it's awesome. I was going through it, and I'm going to make sure I put a link in the interview
thanks.
here because I want everybody to check it out. It's amazing, and you started it in 2010. So is that on or about the time you seriously started backpacking or hiking, or what kind of got you into the woods?
Okay, so I grew up hiking and camping, but never backpacking. I didn't backpack until 2019. And my brother, I have 4 brothers, and I put out an email to them like, "Hey, I want to backpack in the Smokies. Anybody, want to go with me?" Because I didn't want to do it by myself, and it was crickets. Like I didn't hear anything from any of them. And then the brother that went with me, he was like 50 pounds overweight. He smoked. He's a diabetic. He has osteoarthritis in both of his legs. He's like, "I will." And so we started hiking just like once a year because I was a teacher and I only had my spring break available. So we would backpack a couple times but I knew we used to do our family vacations in Sevierville, Tennessee. And so I would always take a group of my nieces and nephews up into the Smokies and go hiking. When you get to Newfound Gap, they have that sign, Katahdin, so many miles. And I saw that. And ever since I saw that, it was just, I wanted to do it. I thought it was an amazing challenge and it just never left me.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you what kind of the trigger was. So when did you said you started in 2019. When did you seriously like start to plan like, okay, next year or 2 years from now?
Right.
Like what was kind of the time between you're like, I'm doing it to you set foot on the trail?
It was 5 years. And I
Okay.
know that because I retired from teaching in 2023, in June of 2023, and I went through a program called DROP. And at that time, once you went into the DROP program, you had 5 years until you retired. You couldn't go 6 years. You had to get out. You can go less than that, but you couldn't go any more than that. So I knew I had 5 years. And at that point in time, I said, when I retire, I'm getting on the trail. And so I just really focused on getting in better shape, losing weight, because I was like up to like 243 pounds at one point. And, worked out with my classes and started saving, doing extra jobs, officiating, doing extra coaching, all that kind of stuff to increase some income to put aside for the hike.
Wow. Did you have
Yeah.
to where you had some experience? What was the longest overnight trip you had done prior to the AT?
The Foothills Trail.
Okay, how long did that take you?
That took me 5 days.
Okay, so that's a
Yeah,
decent amount to kind of
right,
feel how your gear. Did you have to
right.
change out right before starting the AT? Did you have to do much gear tinkering, changing out things, or were you pretty solid?
No, I had to change out some things and I wasn't really sure. You think you know what you need, but you don't really know. And so I had a Deuter backpack. I switched to a Durston Kakwa and I changed up my tent. I went from the first Durston that was made out of a different material to the Dyneema Durston, the 2-person X-Mid. And I changed up my stove. So all those backpacking trips that I took prior to that were great shakedown hikes for me because I was able to whittle things down and get a better feel of what I needed. But even then, at the last minute, I got one of those accordion mats. I didn't need that, and so yeah, you just kind of figure it out as you go.
Yeah. Did all the stuff that you started with pretty much get you through? Were you happy with it all, or was there anything you change out or add to
Did
during
I
the hike?
did change out some things just because my air pad was an 8.5 R value, which is really, really warm. And so when it started getting hot, I got my like 4.3 R value one. I was going to change out my quilt, which was a 10 degree, but I had a bunch of shipping issues. And so that stayed with me the whole time. I picked up a liner, but then I ended up not using it because it was too confining for me. And I shipped back things that I realized I wasn't using enough to justify keeping it. And then I had to switch out some rain pants. I think that was pretty much it. My
And
stove broke halfway through.
what are one or two things you sent home? I'm curious because I think everybody does because you think you
Right.
need it and then you don't. What was just like one thing right off the top of your head that you're like,
The
I don't need
accordion
it?
mat.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That I shipped home because I didn't need it.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
mentioned the heat, and we did have some serious heat, and like the water
Right.
were a savior
Oh,
for us
yes.
there. Did you find that the hardest hiking? Like what did you look
Mhm.
back for stretches? Like was it the heat that got to you the most? What was the hardest part you think?
The hardest part for me was New Hampshire. The heat was hot, but I mean, I think I don't know if I was acclimated to it because I'm from Florida, and I spent a lot of time outside. The water caches were sketchy because you never knew, you had to kind of watch out for your water. But to me, New Hampshire was the hardest. Down here in Florida, like you don't see all those roots and those big boulders and the rebar in the rocks and, the wooden blocks going up the boulders and all that stuff I had no idea. Get really, in Palmerton, coming out of Palmerton. I mean, all of us were like, this was not on Far Out. Like, how come nobody told us about this? Yeah. So all that did not expect any of that, but was so glad that I experienced it.
It's funny you mentioned to Palmerton. There's a hiking podcast that I listen to, Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail,
Hmm.
and he's had on many backpacker, through hikers and things through the years, and everybody kind of that I listen to they're posed with that question, they bring that point right up. It's like that was like the hardest climb on the
Yeah.
entire AT. Like that was the first time that they're like, oh boy, because that was. No,
It was a wake up
it is
call.
a tough climb. Yeah, if you're not
Yeah.
used to it, and there's no rail, there's no
Right. And we weren't
metal or
expecting
anything.
it.
Right.
We just didn't know that it was there.
Yeah, I was there. I know exactly what day I was there because it was July 4th, and there was a great trail magic there. A through hiker from last year named Teach had put on, and I got there about 11:30, stayed there for like 4 hours, just ate and ate and ate and ate. Then I decided to leave at like the hottest part of the day, and I'm like, whoa, I'm going up that. It's like I'm just dripping wet. I got a full.
Right.
I just felt miserable. I'm like, wow, I should have done this earlier or spent the night and done it tomorrow. So yeah, and it's in Pennsylvania, that was the tough part for me too. And I think just Pennsylvania in general, that was, there's not a lot of views. If the only thing you have to
Right.
talk about a state is the rocks, then
Yes.
yeah. On the flip side of that, what were some of the some of your I guess favorite memories and or sections because they can be two different things.
First, though, I want to go back to Palmerton. We were there on the same day then because we were
Okay.
there on July 4th too. But
Okay.
I
Did
think
you
we were
go to
later
that
in the
trail
day.
magic? Oh, did
We
you hit
didn't,
that?
I didn't see any. Yeah, we missed the trail magic, but I don't know if you ran into Moonshine.
No. Doesn't
He
ring a
came
bell.
through. We didn't go down to that hotel at the other end. It was like a mile from the last campsite. We stayed up there and we were out of water, and season one was dehydrated, and they came by and gave us most of their water because they were going down to that hotel. So they really helped us out because we were all dehydrated, but season one was really feeling it that day. And yeah, but we were in the same area that day. So that's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
And I'm not surprised about hearing about the dehydration because it was really it was dangerous
Right.
because I was about
Right.
halfway up that climb and I had my t-shirt that I wore the entire trip basically on. And I took it and could
Yeah.
wring the
I'm
sweat
sure.
out of it. And I'm like, this isn't good. Like I'm wringing more water or sweat out of my
Yes.
shirt than I'm
Yeah.
taking in. So that
Yeah.
was, yeah, that was a really hot day.
So highlights. One of my favorite things that we did was at Station 19. We did karaoke with a bunch of the other hikers and we had a blast. It was so much fun. But as far as I loved the trail magic, the trail angels, that whole community to me just makes the trail just so enjoyable. And as far as the places go, my favorite is Franconia Ridge. I loved being able to be at one mountaintop and be able to see the next mountaintop. And it was funny because when I first got up there and I saw the trail, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a little kind of easy, I think, And then I look out there and the people are this big. And I'm like, maybe not. I retract that statement. So, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, there were so many beautiful parts. I loved the beginning of Massachusetts. It was like an enchanted forest. I just thought it was so beautiful. Everything was mossed over and you had water and you had the beautiful trees. Yeah, I just thought it was so beautiful. I loved the ponies at Mount Rogers and I loved the balds. And I enjoyed Mahoosic Notch, even though it was wet and rainy and scary at points because you'd get to the edge of a top of a rock and you'd look down and you'd be like, I don't know where to go from here. You had to kind of figure it out. So yeah, there were so many great moments. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I agree. And one thing that took me off guard was, I had done trail magic on the AT up here in Maine, not a lot, but a little bit in the 100-mile wilderness. Was that something that you expected? Like you were looking forward to trail magic, or how much research did you do before? Did you watch a lot of YouTube and stuff about the AT, or did
That's
you?
all I did.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, I watched that and instead of watching TV, I was addicted to all these different hikers, but I knew that people did trail magic. I didn't realize how much they did. And I was looking forward and hoping that I would experience it. And yeah, the first time we experienced the trail magic, like with the food setup and stuff like that, we were going into a gap I think it was in Georgia actually, pretty early. So that was pretty exciting.
yeah,
So,
yeah. What? So you started your YouTube channel, you said in 2010, and then you
right.
didn't really get into backpacking and stuff till 2019. Was it just something you wanted to follow stuff you did outside, or what
Well,
kind of
at
led you to
first it
start?
was just I dabbled a little bit, but when I started getting closer to my AT hike, I knew I wanted to document it, and do a daily vlog on it. So I started practicing on my day hikes and my foothills trail and the different hikes that I went on just to kind of get used to doing it and figuring out what mistakes I was making. Because at first I was holding the phone vertical, and I get these comments like, you got to change the way you're holding, and so people help me through that process.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff's trial and error because I did the
Right.
similar thing. And the first 2 weeks out on the trail, I don't even like to look at the videos. What was just going back to trail magic, a thing just popped into my head. What was the best trail magic, and this might take you a second, that you received on the trail that didn't have to do with food? Was it like a
Whoa.
hitchhike or, you know what I'm saying? Like somebody did something that wasn't
Right.
A Coke and a Snickers.
I think this was on the same trip we were going right before we got into the Shenandoahs. Lighthouse. I don't know if you ran into him.
Yep, I
His
know him.
wife picked us up and brought us to a hotel. And then when we were leaving the hotel, we had no idea how we were going to get back. And now I'm forgetting his name. He hiked with Solo. Zeke.
Oh, yes, Zeke, yes.
Zeke's wife was standing, we were checking out of the hotel and she's like, you guys need a ride somewhere? And we're like, as a matter of fact. And then I have one more that is so those people were associated with other thru hikers, But this is a really cool story. So they were doing another trail days in Daleville, right? And so we had to get to what was the other town that was right next to Daleville? Do you remember?
Oh, it wasn't not Glasgow. It was north of.
Yeah. It was, I don't know, but it's so we hiked into the one town. We there was a Kroger's and a gear shop, like, and so I had to get my shoes there. And then we hiked to Daleville, but we were there for their trail days. We spent the night in their park, and then we were trying to get a shuttle back to Kroger's so we could hike those miles. And we were sitting there, and they were said, "Oh, these vans are coming. No worries." I waited and waited, and so all of a sudden, this man comes up and starts asking season one all these questions, and then his wife comes up and goes, "I need to know what's going on, and tell me all about it." So she ended up giving us a ride back to Kroger's and left her family at the park, and they just happened to have been there to let the kids just run off some energy on the way down to Maryland for her sister's graduation. And so her name was Kara. She gave us her contact information. When we got to Harper's Ferry, she said to call her, so we did. And she came up, she drove like 45 minutes or something like that, drove up to Harper's Ferry, took us out to Walmart to let us resupply, spent some time with us, brought a friend of hers who was an orthopedic surgeon. They, like she asked us if we had any ailments and told her my knees were aching a little bit. So they went home. And then that evening, her friend drove all the way back with a box of Voltaren for my knees.
The gel or
The lotion.
yeah, I used that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It was great. I used a bunch of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was just really, really, out of the blue and just so kind. So kind.
Yeah, I have a similar, I'll shorten it up, but basically I made it to a road crossing and it was like 3 miles to a kind of a convenience store where you could go in and sit down. And it was during that hot
Right.
climate too in Virginia. And I started hitchhiking and I started counting the cars that went by me. And the 39th, I must have been melting on the pavement, right?
Right.
Just walking. I bet it was 120 on the tar.
Oh, wow.
The 39th car that came by picked me up, and it was a young lady, and she looked at me and she's like, she rolled down the window. She's like, what do you, I said, I just need to get like 2.5 by then, I think, 2.5 miles down the road. And she's like, well, I don't normally pick up hitchhikers. And I showed her my license. I'm like, just, and so she goes, well, I'll get in. And like, she was nervous, I could tell. And I didn't really say anything. And I said, I got to ask. I said, if you don't usually do this, like, why did you pick me up? Why did you stop?
Right.
And I told her she was the 39th car. And she's like, you just looked like you needed help. And like it totally, restores your faith in humanity.
Yes,
probably
absolutely.
Overgeneralizing, but it was just like so nice. And I thanked her. And then I literally took one step out the door, like 2 hours later when I went to leave. And a young guy whose buddy had done the trail years ago, he was gassing up and he's like, hey, you heading back to the trail? Jumped in my car.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's just stuff like that. And then we all, it happens to all of us. And it's just, it's just really good. What I'm always wondering about, like, just the underlying thing that make us all, succeed in this endeavor. What did you coach? You mentioned something.
I coached volleyball.
Okay. Did you play volleyball?
I did. I played in high school and in college.
Oh, in college too. Okay. So stuff like that makes a lot of sense to me, because when I would really start, connecting with people and talking a lot, like having, grit or a competitive nature. So I played basketball in high school and college.
Right.
And other people, maybe, not that sports, I'm a little biased. I think sports teaches a lot of life lessons stuff, but just to have that kind of, competitive fire, because you need something to make it. What was your hardest day? Do you remember it? When you maybe entertained quitting or thought about it?
Never thought about quitting, ever. And I think you're right about sports. And I don't know if it was me being an athlete or me coaching athletes for 40 years that helped me with that grit, but Mount Madison, to me, that broke me a little bit. And I don't know if it was because I was tired, but I felt like I was falling behind my crew, and my footing wasn't really good. I didn't feel very stable. I fell and landed really hard on my hip. I tumbled a lot in that section, and I just felt like I was slowing people down. And so mentally and emotionally, it probably, that probably taxed me the most that
You
time.
mentioned bowling. I counted. I had a friend who did it a few years ago, 2022, I think, and he counted his falls, and he fell 25 times. So my goal was to not. So I fell 17 times. I kept track the whole way,
Yeah,
and I only consider. I think just like once I really hurt myself.
right.
Did you have any bad falls or ailments in general that you dealt with along the trail, either for the whole time or a short
Yeah,
time?
my knee bothered me a little bit when I went into, I can't even remember where it was, um, Buena Vista. I think we did a couple long days and some big declines there, and it bothered me. But once I got back out on the trail, I was taking some leave. It didn't bother me anymore. I fell and almost broke my thumb because I like overextended it. And then I fell and landed on my ribs right at the end and bruised them. And I just had a hard time I would have a hard time just stepping over something. And then at night, I had a hard time rolling over. That was probably the worst injury I had, but nothing that would stop me from continuing on. And it bothered me a little bit after I got off the trail for a couple weeks. But once I was off the trail, honestly, my body felt good. I could go right back out there. I felt very fortunate.
Yeah, that's how close to the end were you when you fell on your ribs?
I was in the 100-mile wilderness and probably maybe a week or week and a half before we summited. I'd have to go back and check, but yeah,
Yeah, that's what always scared me. First of all, I don't know how, and maybe it's just because you're only around, the certain people in front of you and the certain people behind
right,
you. I'm just because you get tired. I was always amazed that more people didn't get injured. To be honest, even
right,
myself, I kept thinking like it wasn't. I don't think until I think when I finally made it to the 100-mile wilderness, just because I'm so familiar with it,
right,
that I felt like, okay, I think I'm going to make it without getting hurt. Because
right,
it was in the back of my head. I mean, a little ankle. I mean, it doesn't take much.
right. No, especially on those descents that we had, some of those flat rock descents, they were pretty sketchy. I don't know. Did you run into Zippers? He was with Warrior Expedition.
I met a lot of those people. I don't remember
Yeah.
him specifically. I met Lady Glitter Sparkles and Monk. And
She was hiking with him.
okay. Okay. Yep.
So, but he ended up with I think he had a concussion. And then when he was around us, he sprained his ankle and it was huge. And it was like just a couple days before we were supposed to summit. And he got an x-ray and it wasn't bruised. And then on the way up, he dislocated his shoulder on the way up to Katahdin. Somebody put it back in the socket and made it all the way to the top. And then on the way back down off A-ball, he dislocated again and needed medical to come up and get him.
Wow.
And
That's
then
brutal.
went home and had
Brutal.
surgery.
Well,
Yeah, but he made it.
my friend Pilgrim, he fell, hit his rib. He broke two ribs
That's what I
going down
heard.
the backside of Wildcat, and he went home and then came back and on the trail like
Good for him.
4 weeks
Yeah,
later. Yeah, I mean, and then he had to go through like Mahoosuc Notch, and
right.
I mean, I don't know how he did it, but
I don't
some
either.
some people that had those injuries, and everybody has something. I would have
Right,
something hurt every day. My knees, like I've
right.
been using the Voltaren gel. We could do a Voltaren gel commercial for probably
We could.
because I had it slathered all over me. What did you? Everybody always wants to know about food. I got a layered question here for you. How much did your food choices change from the beginning to end? And what, if anything, did you keep like as a constant that you ate the whole time?
I pretty much stayed with the same stuff the entire time. I had protein bars in the morning. I did tuna or chicken wraps with a tortilla during lunch. And then for dinner, I didn't do a lot of freeze-dried meals, but I did occasionally. But I would use the Nor sides with a chicken packet or tuna packet. I did mashed potatoes once in a while. And then I also did stovetop stuffing with chicken. And then I love those dried onions, that people put on casseroles. I
Oh, the
would put that in
crunchy
my tuna
ones.
fish. Yes,
Yeah.
because it added flavor and crunch. I'd put that in my tuna fish and I'd put it in my dinners.
Yeah, that's a good idea too, because they're light too.
Right.
To carry anything that you won't anything that you ate out there that like you might not, it might not be something you never eat again, but you're like, yeah, I've had enough of that for a bit.
No, I mean,
No.
I was good. There's some of that stuff I don't eat normally. Like I don't eat like North sides and and mashed potatoes. I don't eat those things. I'll eat them when I get back on the trail, and I don't use I have tuna fish that I'm still eating, which most people are like, I'm never touching tuna fish again. Yeah, I'm still eating it. So I try not to eat the protein bars unless I'm on the trail.
Yeah. What about sweets? Like for me, my thing that I shouldn't say I never eat it, but very, very rarely at home will I have ice cream, and I love it. And that was something that
Right,
once I was on the trail and had lost 40 pounds, I was just like, I'm just eating it like
right,
crazy. Was there something that out there you just let one like, okay, I'm out here doing exercise, I don't care.
right. So we did some ice cream. I had some virtual trail magic, and anytime we got that, we got ice cream. But on the trail, like my snacks, I fell in love with Sour Patches, and I never ate them before. And then I would have peanut M&Ms. I really like those. And then, when I first heard of people going to the Dollar General for, resupply, I'm like, I am not buying my food at Dollar General. But that is the best place to go,
Yes.
because their portions are small. Like they have these little cookie cracker things. There's only 4 in a little packet. Like, so yeah,
Yeah, that
but
was a
those are
great
my good
place.
things.
That was the first one we hit was in Franklin.
Right.
I think Franklin, North Carolina. Was that? Yeah, I think so.
I think we went to an Ingles there, maybe.
Yeah. But I hit a Dollar General and did like a 5-day resupply for
Yeah.
$22. And I'm like, all right, this is great. And like
Yeah.
you said, you don't have to get like 20 protein
Right.
bars in a
Yep.
big box or
Yep.
something like that. When did you feel like, no, I didn't even talk about injuries or things like I did before, but when did you feel like, okay, I can do this. I know I'm going to make it unless something weird happens. Like, do you remember kind of that point in time or where you were?
No, not really. I mean, I just kept on. When I first got to the first 100 miles, I was really like, oh my gosh, I've hiked 100 miles? Like it's crazy. And then every 100 mile was a huge celebration for us. We took our pictures, and it just, I think when we got into New Hampshire and I started figuring out what these mountains look like and felt like to climb, I, I, I don't know that I ever doubted that I was going to make it, but I think once I got through the whites, I felt a lot more confident.
Yeah. Did you start counting down like me? I know I pretty much hiked with 3 other people. I think once we hit like, I don't know if it was 1600 or 1700, we started going, instead of like counting up, we started going like, oh, we only have 400 miles left, 380 miles left. Did you
Yes.
guys do that at all?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we did it. I think we did it after the, gosh, I don't know, maybe 1600 mile mark, you know, when you get under that. Actually, it was after you hit that 1,000 miles, when you had less than 1,000 miles to go, then we started, that was a pretty big deal. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I like those 100 mile. When I hit 1,000, that was a big, for whatever reason for me, that was like a big mental hurdle
right.
because I didn't take I think I had taken 1-0. Yeah, I didn't take a 0 till Daleville
Wow.
because I was just so maniacal
Right.
and I wasn't in a hurry or anything, but yeah, I love those 100. I'd take a picture
Right.
of everyone and
Yep. We did
lay,
too.
lay down beside it. So where, speaking of zeros, what were some of your favorite places you stayed? I'm looking, maybe a hostel. It doesn't have to be a
Right.
hostel, or it could be
Right.
just a
So
hotel in a tent.
we were really lucky because all the way up the trail, there were people that reached out to us that were willing to help us. So like a former principal let us stay in his cabin in Franklin. I had somebody in Virginia who was a former assistant coach. I had, like just that kind of stuff the whole way up. But I would have liked to stay at Woods Hole Hostel. I enjoyed Station 19. We stayed at Angel's Rest. There's a couple other ones that we stayed at. My favorites were the Hostel of Maine and the Notch. Those I really, really enjoyed. And there were other ones that were really nice too, but those two, we didn't stay a lot. We had 19, no, we had 14 zeros the whole trip. And 13 zeros, 4 of those were for trail days. And the rest were just, sporadically throughout the journey. So we
Yeah.
didn't, and a lot of those were, with people that we knew.
Yeah, no, that's not many at all. How many did you? I don't know. I did some stats on my hike just because I'm a nerd. Did you figure out how many nights like you actually spend in a tent? It must have been the majority.
It was the majority. We stayed in the shelters. Our first shelter that we stayed in was the first shelter after Newfound Gap. And so we were concerned about the norovirus, and my brother is really he was really set on absolutely no shelters. So he left, and then the first shelter we hit after he was gone, it was kind of nasty out. We stayed in a shelter. So we only stayed in shelters if we were really tired that night and we got into camp late, or we thought it was going to storm, or we knew it was going to storm. We tried to stay in a shelter. Otherwise, we were staying in our tents.
I found it warmer. I know I was with Solar, and we were somewhere, I think, in Massachusetts. We got to a shelter. There was no one there. And we
Right.
stayed in the shelter, and we about froze to death. I'm like, we should have just set up our tents. It would have been
Yeah.
warm. You know,
Yeah.
and I liked my tent.
Right.
I just thought, because it did get a little chilly, and I
Right.
think I had a 50-degree bag too. So
Oh, wow. Yeah. I would have been
yeah.
cold too.
So there was a couple nights. Well,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I've had people ask me, would you do it again? But when I think about that question, like you mentioned Station 19, so I stayed at Mountain Harbor,
Right.
which was the other direction. And then you
Right.
stayed at Hostel of Maine, and I stayed at the Stratton
Right.
Hostel. I'm scared, the name's escaping me, but the one in Stratton. So I'm like, well, I'd
Right.
like to check out those two,
Right.
so I think there are some. Would you ever do it again?
No, I mean, part of me would love to do it again. I know that I'd like to do sections of it, but as you get older, like I'm 63, we have less days ahead of us than we do behind us. And there's so many other things that I want to do, like other hikes I want to do, other places I want to go. Like, do I want to redo what I've already done, or do I want to experience something I've never experienced before? And so,
Would you do
that's,
another long hike? Like, is PCT, CDT on your radar at all?
I don't know. PCT is starting to tap at my shoulder. I was adamantly, I'm not doing that one, but now I'm kind of flexible a little bit. But I want to do the Camino, which is not in comparison. I want to do the West Highland in Scotland, and then they have the Dingaway in Ireland, so I could do one and then jump over to Ireland and do the other one. And I think I'd like to do the Colorado Trail. And
Yeah.
then I just got done interviewing Strider. Did you
Yep.
talk about?
I know
And he's
Strider.
going to do the Allegheny Trail in West Virginia, and I checked it out, and it looks beautiful. So there's a bunch of different ones that I consider. I just don't know which direction I'm going to go first.
Yeah, no, that's good. I know, and I don't have any either. Although I think next year, just because of the proximity where I live in Maine, I'm going to finish the rest. I'm going to jump on the IAT just north of Baxter, the International
Nice.
AT, and finish Maine. It's
Right.
138 miles.
Oh, yeah.
So that'd be cool to just finish the rest of
Right.
Maine up
Yeah.
to the Canadian border, New Brunswick. And so that's one that I am going to do. But all those ones, like every one of those you mentioned, except the Allegheny, like they're all, and I think
Right.
it was important for me, and I'll ask you how you felt. It was important for me when I got back, because I did struggle badly about, I think mostly just not being outside, and
Right.
the relationships
Right.
that you make.
That was
And I know
it. That was it for me.
and I know you made long relationships, so it did help me just thinking about doing other stuff. How was your, like, physically you said you felt good. How was your mental state when you got back the first few weeks?
It was pretty good. First, I want to tell you that Solo invited me to do the long trail, so that's also on my list.
Oh, that's a good one
So,
too. Yeah, a lot of people
yeah.
go back and do that. That's funny. That's
Yeah.
more than a lot of people, because you feel like, you did 100 miles of it.
Right.
You might as well just finish. Well, how much is the rest of it again? Is it like 100?
I think it's under 300 miles. I'm not really sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but that
Right.
would be really cool to go
Yeah.
to Vermont, I think.
Yeah. I am. So when I got back here, right before I left, I was teaching, and then I was taking care of my mom, and then I went right into the trail. So I was around people all the time. I came home, and I live somewhat rural. I don't hang out with my neighbors, and so it's just lonely. Like when you're so used to being around, I know that people, they say when you're on the trail, if you want to be by yourself, you can be by yourself. If you don't want to, but having those interactions on the trail and then coming home and being in kind of a solitude, like I go hiking a lot, but I do it by myself. And so that has been an adjustment. That I think is the hardest part for me, is getting out there, because everybody that I was associated with here were teachers or parents of players. and they all have their own lives, that they're not intermingled with me anymore because I'm not in that world anymore.
Yeah, I definitely found how much of the time I know because people have say, "Oh, who'd you hike with? This person," but I didn't really like hike all day with people. Like a lot of it, you spend a lot of
Right.
time. Was that your case too? Like, and then you just kind of meet up wherever your destination was, or did you hike together some as well?
We hike together every day, but not together. Like season one in Phoenix pretty much stayed pretty close in proximity. I was usually, a lot of times I was in eyesight of them, but I wasn't necessarily hiking with them, hence the name Caboose. And so they were doing, they were up a little bit faster, but as soon as we'd get to a certain point, they would get there and then they'd wait until I got there and then we'd go again. And so we were always in pretty close proximity with each other, but we weren't always with each other.
Yeah, that's good too, because I know sometimes I was the way. I mean, I could have been caboose too. There was no one I hiked with where I was ever ahead. I was always, oh, which I was fine with. And I didn't do any. Did you do? I'll cut my own question off here. Like everyone was talking about, oh, doing a marathon or whatever. I think I did 20 miles, like maybe 3 times or so.
Yeah,
My average for the AT, taking up zeros was like almost exactly 15,
really.
and that's
I
what
think
I
ours
want.
probably was too.
Yeah.
17 was my happy spot. I was happy with 17, not New Hampshire and not in the
Right.
Whites, but 17 I felt good about. You could get 10 miles done pretty easy before noon. And then you had, the rest of the day to do 7. That felt good. I like that. But I did it 20 plus miles, maybe 5 or 6 times. I think 24 something was the most we ever did. So
Yeah, yeah. I didn't really. Mine. What you mentioned 17, like 18 miles. I started. I don't. My body started to reject
yeah,
keeping going because it was just like, all right, you've gone far enough. There's no rush. Did you have a date that you had to get done by, like personally? I mean, obviously the park closes, but were you
right.
under a time?
No,
Okay,
not myself. Phoenix did though.
right, because
And so,
she had her visa. She had the six
right.
months. What was her? When did she have to be done by?
She had to be done like legally she had to be out of the country by I think the 11th. I think it might have been the 13th. We got done on the 9th.
Okay, yeah. So
So we
so I got
yeah,
done the 8th. So you guys were that next day.
right. So
Wow.
that was her goal is to be done by the 9th. And
Yeah.
there were times on the trail where she was convinced we weren't going to get finished by the 9th. Then we kept on telling her, we got this, like we're going to do this. And, and we made it and it was awesome.
Yeah, that's a bad feeling, I'm sure, for her because I didn't
Yes.
have any constraint either,
Right.
which made it good because I wouldn't have wanted that pressure
Right.
to
Yeah.
do it at all. I'm glad. Have you been? It's interesting. I'd like to talk. There's a young guy, Beta Bear was his trail name, and he was from the UK, and I've got him lined up to interview as well. And because I can't imagine, we're at least. I mean, you're not too far from
Right.
the DAT, and these I'm an hour and a half.
Right.
For someone who comes over and then goes back, like
Yeah.
that
That's a
reverse
struggle.
that reverse culture shock should be like. Have you
Yeah.
talked to her at all and how she's
Oh
doing?
yeah, we talk pretty regularly. It's been a culture shock for her for sure. I wanted
Yeah,
to try to get her on my channel and she won't do it.
yeah, yeah. I'm surprised because I mean I enjoy obviously talking about that. I think it's one of
Right.
those things that's so hard to. I think about it like all the time, and it's got to a point now where what? So October, November, December, like 4 months out, even around family and things, someone will bring something up, and I'll go to say something about an experience on the AT, and I stop myself
Right.
because I feel I'm like crowbarring it into the conversation, and they're like, you get an eye roll. Did
Right.
you feel like that? You have situations where you feel like,
Yes, I do. And in fact, we were just talking about that I just did an interview with Slugger and Saber.
yeah,
And we were just talking about, like it's so fun to do this kind of stuff because like we get it, like we understand it. And, it's so much easier to talk to somebody who is out there doing it with you. And when you try to share it with somebody that has really no idea what you went through or your experience, it's really hard to relay that and for them to really get it. And they get tired of it a little bit easier.
yeah, yeah. No, I get it. Last question, and this is something that really I've only been thinking about myself the last few weeks. Are you proud of yourself for making it?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Have you
But
thought
it's
about that?
weird. What am I? What?
Have you thought about that? Have you said to yourself, I'm proud of myself for doing that?
I think because other people, like in our hiking group have been like, we need to be really proud of ourselves. And I am. But honestly, when I got off the trail, I was so emotional going into the exit, like the last week or so. Like there was a guy that came up and was talking to me on the trail that was just day hiking, and he was just pumping me. That is so awesome. You guys are so amazing. And I'm just crying. Like, but when I got off the trail, I almost felt like, did that really happen? Did I really just do that? And so it almost feels like it was a lifetime ago. And so, yes, I am proud of myself, but it almost feels like, did it really happen?
Yeah. I often, I've got this picture collage right up here. I put it, you can do like 12 4x6s.
Oh, nice.
And I'd probably look at that. I mean, probably once a day, or I might miss a day. It's down in my office here where, I'm retired.
Right.
I don't have to come here anymore unless I want to now. And, but I'll look at that and I'll look at those pictures and I'll be like, wow, because when you met me, I had a beard.
Right. Yeah.
I'll even look at myself and I'll be like, wow, it just seems like almost like another person, it's Sploggy, Caboose. Like, not many people probably call you Caboose anymore.
No.
But there is the same person that did it, but there is
Right.
kind of a, I don't know, kind of a separation.
Alter ego.
Yeah, you got an alter ego. Well, look, I could talk to you all day. I don't want to hold you
Yeah.
up. You probably got warmer weather to go out and enjoy there in Florida.
It is a beautiful day today.
Than I have in Maine. We have sun, but it was snowing earlier. So I really appreciate you doing that. It was great. I was
So much fun.
you were another great person that I had the opportunity to meet on the trail, like so many others, and which
Likewise.
yeah, I mean, I just cherish all those interactions, like you were mentioning earlier. So I appreciate coming on, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah. Next time I have to get you on mine.
100% would love to.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
See ya.
All right.
Bye bye.